Jeep reckons that their Cherokee was the car that created the SUV segment, which makes you picture the tough, rough off-roader this model used to be, but isn't anymore. Forget set square styling and agricultural underpinnings, this 5th generation model is very different, like no Cherokee we've seen before. Its chassis is more car-like and, in diesel form anyway, its off-road credentials are less pronounced, though there's still a clever select terrain traction control system to offer more capability than most rivals can provide. This won't be a car for everyone, but it's a different, welcome contender if you're looking for a RAV4 class compact SUV or shopping at the upper end of the Qashqai class family-sized crossover segment.
What can you say that hasn't been said already about Jeep's legendary Cherokee? Well, quite a lot actually, because as you can see, this 5th generation version is nothing like its boxy predecessors. Cherokee always used to be Jeep's bread and butter brand. This was the first car they launched in Europe, and it used to form their bedrock of the range until the Americans expanded it upwards with the Grand Cherokee and latterly downwards with Patriot and Compass models. Now, the brand will tell you that this vehicle's origins lie with the Willys Jeep that played its part in winning World War II, hence the since 1941 motif on this car's steering wheel. The company's tougher Wrangler model, though, has a more direct bloodline to that design. No, the Cherokee has always been a different kind of product, one born out of Jeep's post-war need to make its offering suit a wider market, which was why, in 1963, Willys Jeep underpinnings were used to create a model called the Wagoneer, a vehicle you could actually use as rugged family transport. That idea caught on, and when the brand saw the need to introduce a more affordable 2-door Wagoneer variant in 1974, they christened the car the Cherokee. Now, if you know the name, then the version you'll probably remember is the 2nd generation XJ design that sold for 17 years from 1984 and established the name Cherokee as shorthand for properly capable compact SUV motoring. 3rd and 4th generation KJ and KK versions followed in 2002 and 2008 respectively, sold as Jeep Liberty models in the USA, but still badged Cherokee in Europe. In truth, though, neither properly captured the spirit of the Mark II design. Time then for a version that does. A tough brief, given that a car of this kind must now live in a very different world and sell to a very different kind of customer from the one who might have been easily satisfied with an old XJ. Which is why this Mark V model, launched here in mid-2014 and sold as Cherokee everywhere, is such a very different car to its predecessors. Now, to be frank, it was always going to be anyway, given the Jeep brand's modern-day ownership by Fiat and the Touring company's preference for reusing platforms across its various brands. For the modern era, the Italians decided this model would be designed as a tarmac tool first and foremost, which is why it now sits on the underpinnings of an Alfa Romeo Giulietta hatchback. Yet signs of Cherokee DNA still remain, both in the unusual styling and also in a mechanical specification, which still aims to position this as the most capable choice in its segment. So, does it all add up? Let's put this car to the test and find out. So, what's it like on the move? Well, the looks suggest this car to be more Qashqai-like crossover than SUV-style 4x4, and so it proves on the tarmac, where this Jeep feels most at home. Now, that might sound an odd thing to say about a Jeep, a brand of car you'd normally expect to be designed to master the Rubicon Trail. This one hasn't been, though. In fact, the only Cherokee variant the brand advertises as what it calls trail-related is the rugged Trailhawk version that almost no one in Europe will buy, as it comes with a thirsty 3.2-litre Pentastar petrol engine. That car gets a 38mm ground height increase, features an underbody skid plate and a rear differential lock, plus bumpers designed for sharp inclines. All the things you'd think a Jeep would offer, but there's none of that in the much more ordinary diesel models the brand wants European customers to actually buy. Cars like this one. It's all surplus to requirement in the RAV4 CR-V segment in which this Cherokee must now compete. To be fair, this model still remains a slightly more capable choice than rivals of that sort, though that's not really because of its standard active drive 1 4-wheel drive system. This simply shuttles torque from front to rear in response to slip, just as you'd find elsewhere in this same segment. No, what makes this car a little more effective in the slush than the unremarkable class norm is the way this setup combines with Jeep's clever select terrain system, designed to be like having an off-road expert sitting next to you as you drive. With the push of a button on the select terrain dial, you can choose between a series of customized settings to suit the ground you're traveling over. On standard versions, there's snow or sand mud options if you're off-road, a sport option for on tarmac use, and an auto setting if you can't be bothered to choose. For a car that could manage a bit more, you'd have to opt for Jeep's extra cost Active Drive 2 4-wheel drive system that adds a low range gearbox and hill descent control to ease you down slippery slopes. The Active Drive 2 setup, though, isn't even available unless you're buying at the priciest top spec end of the diesel range, specifically a car with 170 brake horsepower version of the Fiat Source 2-litre Multijet 2 unit that all mainstream Cherokees must have. This is a variant only supplied with a 9-speed automatic gearbox. Is it really necessary to have all those gears? Well, you certainly won't be regularly using many of them. The first ratio only clicks in during aggressive launches, while the top 4 are there as overdrive ratios to try and relax the rather noisy engine on the motorway. In that respect, the Auto Box is worth having, as it makes this Jeep a surprisingly effective long-distance cruiser. If you don't want it, you have to have a variant with the 140 brake horsepower version of the 2-litre diesel, and here there's a choice of either an entry-level front-wheel drive variant or the 4x4 version that I'm trying here, both mated to a rather notchy 6-speed manual gearbox. The 2-wheel drive model is expected to be a minority choice, as its efficiency saving over this 4x4 variant aren't very great, though it is a bit faster, 0 to 62 miles per hour, occupying 10.9 seconds on the way to 116 miles per hour. This 140 brake horsepower 4x4 manual model's performance figures are pretty much the same as you'd get from the 170 brake horsepower 4x4 automatic, so rest to 62 miles per hour occupies just over 10 seconds, en route to just under 120 miles per hour. The only really significant downside to choosing this 140 brake horsepower model rather than the 170 brake horsepower version is the reduction you get in braked towing capacity, reduced from the 2,475 kilograms you get in the 170 version to 1,800 kilograms in the front-driven 140 model, and just 1,600 kilograms in this 140 4x4 variant. Towers, though, will be pleased to find that a trailer sway safety system does come as standard. On tarmac, on poorer roads, the ride quality lags a little behind best-in-class standards, though, like the refinement, it does improve as you get faster. Nor is body control quite as good as the best crossovers and compact SUVs can manage. Having said that, though, this thing will obviously go a few places that a Nissan Qashqai wouldn't want to even look at. You can't have everything. There are positives, though. The brakes are excellent, and with either 320 or 350 newton meters of torque on tap, depending on the engine tune you choose, the 2-litre diesel engine rarely feels short of pulling power. That's one reason why you never approach the ridiculously large red hatched area on the rev counter. Now, I even quite like the steering, which has a bit of a welcome firmness to it, though that won't suit everybody. And in summary, well, somewhere in this design I think there's the potential for either a very good off-roader or quite an acceptable crossover class tarmac tool. Jeep's issue has been in choosing its priorities, where there's no conflict of objectives as with the top mud-focused petrol-powered Trailhawk variant, for example. You can see just what this Mark V model Cherokee can actually do. It boasts an approach angle of 29.9 degrees, a departure angle of 32.1 degrees, and breakover angle of 22.9 degrees, and with 221 millimeters of ride height can therefore tackle impressively tough terrain. Jeep developed this variant in the Moab Desert, and you know what? It really shows. As I've been saying, this standard diesel version is very different. It sits just 183 millimeters from the deck, and its respective approach, departure and breakover angle figures are much reduced, falling to 20.0, 25.9 and 20.6 degrees. The crossover class norm, basically. But then that's because most potential buyers want the crossover class norm. For them, this car is about school runs, daily commutes, shopping trips, and family weekend duties. It fits the brief. There's no doubt that this fifth generation Cherokee is distinctive and rather radical. Though the trademark trapezoidal wheel arches and the 7-bar front grille remain constants, there's not much else that links this model to its predecessors. Jeep design chief Mark Allen had a different vision for this vehicle, and though it's one that may not please the brand's purists, it may well be successful in broadening this car's appeal in a demanding and fashion-led compact SUV and crossover market that simply won't consider boxy, rugged shapes anymore. The styling concept is delivered in two parts, with a smooth and flowing top half that extends down to this kink in the belt line that visually transitions you into the tough, durable lower body. Even the styling flourishes have practical application, like these slim daytime running lights positioned above projector headlamps. Well, they sit high for waterfording. The styling at the rear, though less controversial, is equally neat, based around these big LED tail lamps and a tailgate that extends right down to a rear bumper that incorporates fog lights and reflectors. Raise it and you'll be lugging your packages over a low loading lip into what is one of the largest cargo areas in its class. 591 litres in size. That's a little less than you'd get in, let's say, a rival RAV4, but equal in size that's offered by a Honda CR-V and is far bigger than the space you'd get in other potential competitors like Volkswagen's Tiguan, Ford's Kuga or Mazda's CX-5. You can also make good use of the space too, thanks to Jeep's cargo management system, which has a universal module rack on the side of the cargo area with hooks and a removable grocery bag. Now, there's also an underfloor stowage bin with 77 litres of storage. That would be ideal for valuables. That is, if you didn't specify the optional full-size spare wheel that I have here. Need more space? Then your first option is to slide the rear bench forward, which increases your boot capacity to a very useful 741 litres, with a little extra still possible if you position the angle of this bench a little bit more vertically. Now, if that's not enough, then pushing forward the 60-40 split backrest frees up 1,267 litres. That's about 20% less than the class norm, which is probably why Jeep has decided to equip all models with a useful fold flat front passenger seat that flattens to accommodate really long items. Take a seat in the rear, and the accommodation on offer is certainly class competitive, with pretty generous standards of headroom, provided you haven't specified the panoramic roof I have here that could brush your head if you happen to be 6 foot or so in height. There's reasonable knee and leg room provided you've pushed the sliding seat all the way back. Now the backrest reclines too to aid comfort on longer trips. On such journeys it'd be a little tight back here for 3 adults, but then that's par for this class. You do get air vents and a 12-volt socket, and should extended mileage be necessary when travelling 5 up, it'll certainly help that there's a scalloped shape for the rear of the transmission tunnel that offers a bit more space for the middle passenger's feet. Up front, well, apart from the branded 3-spoke steering wheel, there's nothing that's especially Jeep-like here, which is perhaps why that wheel feels the need to parade its since 1941 motif. Still, it's neat and reasonably upmarket thanks to a design approach shared with the company's bigger Grand Cherokee model. You certainly get quite a riot of contrasting finishes, grains and softnesses for the dash materials, but at least most of the things you commonly see and touch seem all to be of reasonably good quality, with cheaper materials relegated further down the dash. Get comfortable on the supportive seats and you'll find yourself quite upright. Now, the steering column could probably benefit from a little more range in its rake and reach, but otherwise it's not too hard to find a decent driving position. Certainly all the major switchgear falls easily to hand and you view a clear set of instruments through the grippy leather-trimmed steering wheel. Over-the-shoulder visibility could be a bit better. I could do also without the faux wood inserts on the doors, and some of the plastics are a bit shiny, but overall it's a good effort. Pride of place in the centre of the fascia is reserved for this Uconnect TFT colour touchscreen, 5 inches in size in entry-level versions, but biggest in class 8.4 inches in plusher variants like this one. It's borrowed from the Maserati Ghibli and is admirably clear and intuitive to use, with control systems that are easy to figure out, so you won't have to be delving into the manual every time you want to Bluetooth pair your phone or try to find a point of interest on the sat-nav. It's lightning fast too. You won't have to sit twiddling your thumbs for pages to refresh like you do in some rival systems. It's a practical cabin too, Jeep having done the smart thing and raided all of the Fiat Group's MPV know-how for this car, packing in a lot of clever storage solutions. So the glove box is deep and large enough to hold a tablet or a small laptop. Now there's a covered bin on top of the instrument panel giving secure storage for a wallet or a phone. And the front passenger seat has a hidden in-seat compartment courtesy of a flip-up passenger seat cushion. 2 front cup holders have grips for different sizes of drink containers and are rubber lined to make them easy to clean. List pricing suggests that almost all Cherokee customers will be paying in the £25,000 to £35,000 bracket for the models that will account for almost all sales, namely the 2-litre 140 and 170 diesel variants. Now, a tiny handful of customers may opt to go further and choose the far more off-road oriented 3.2-litre petrol-powered Trailhawk version, for which a £35,000 budget is needed. Now, we'll focus here, though, on the diesel lineup, where there's a £2,000 premium to pay if you're looking at the 2-litre 140 version and, like most buyers, want to graduate from a front-wheel drive to a 4-wheel drive version. If you want the pokier 2-litre 170 diesel variant, you'll have to have it with 4-wheel drive and an automatic gearbox, which will take the asking price up to at least £30,000. On to the value proposition all of that represents. To be able to accurately assess that, you need to appreciate exactly the target Jeep is aiming at here. Now, forget lower-end crossovers and cheaper small SUVs, cars perhaps like Nissan's Qashqai, Suzuki's SX4 and Kia Sportage. No, the Cherokee has its sights set above models like these and instead targets smarter, more sophisticated mainstream brand competitors of this kind. Here I'm talking about reasonably capable cars like Toyota's RAV4 and Honda CR-V, as well as similar contenders that also have one foot in the softer Qashqai class crossover segment, models like Mazda's CX-5, Ford's Kuga and Volkswagen's Tiguan. So how does the Jeep stack up in comparison to vehicles such as these? Well, it's true that if you're looking at the volume 2-litre 140 diesel versions, you'll find that Jeep list pricing could see you paying up to a couple of £1,000s more to own a Cherokee. Now, against that, though, you have to remember that this is a better specified car that also offers you a fraction more space than the rivals that I've just talked about. Some potential customers may also be swayed by the Jeep brand equity in this segment and the sharper deals that the franchise network will probably be able to deliver. Now, if you're looking at the pokier 2-litre diesel 170 automatic version, well, the same kind of premium to own this Jeep over most of the obvious rivals I was talking about does still exist. That is, of course, unless you happen to be price matching it against equivalent versions of Mazda's CX-5 and Volkswagen's Tiguan, which are pretty much priced identically. Before I finish on the value proposition thing, it's probably also worth making a final few points. It's tempting to think that for the kind of money Jeep is asking here, you could begin to consider the idea of getting yourself something that apparently competes, but which has a properly premium badge on the bonnet. Say an Audi Q3 or a BMW X1 or a Mercedes GLA. Bear in mind, though, that these are not proper SUVs, but far less capable crossover models. Also remember that they're significantly smaller and that you'll have to spend a lot more cash over the list price to spec them up to Cherokee levels. A better argument perhaps points out that for the cost of the top 2-litre diesel 170 model, you could have 7 rather than just 5 seats in a car of this kind by going for, say, a Kia Sorento or a Hyundai Santa Fe. Again, though, you'd be getting a less capable car. To get 7 seats and a proper 4x4 capability, you'd have to stretch to a Land Rover Discovery Sport, and that'd mean finding another £5,000 over the cost of the 2-litre diesel 170 Jeep. If, having considered all of this, you conclude that it is a Cherokee that you really want, then the value-laden specification this car offers will certainly have played a part in your decision. So what exactly are we talking about here? Well, even the entry-level Cherokee Longitude model gets LED daytime running lights, LED taillights, front fog lamps that light your way around the bends, Jeep's handy Park Sense rear park assist with stop sensor system, an alarm, and 17-inch aluminium wheels, whose finish is matched on the window surrounds, grille, roof rails, and exhaust pipe. Inside, there's automatic air conditioning and electric front windows, along with a 6-way adjustable driver's seat. That's on top of cruise control, a full flat front passenger seat, and a leather trimmed steering wheel with buttons for the Uconnect infotainment system with its 6-speaker audio setup. This includes USB and Bluetooth connectivity, plus an audio jack input point, a remote SD card slot, and an integrated voice command setup. You also get a useful cargo management system in the boot with a removable grocery bag and a universal module rack to which you can attach all kinds of extra cost Mopar accessories. Things like a cargo bin and mat, a foldable cooler, and a first aid and emergency kit. Overall, then, a very complete specification. In fact, my only slight disappointment is that you have to pay extra for the kind of full-size spare wheel and tyre I'd have thought a proper SUV like this would have as standard. Otherwise, unless you get a petrol Trailhawk version, all you get is what Jeep calls a tyre service kit, which you'll probably find yourself cursing if you end up stranded by the side of the road on a wet and windy night. Most buyers will probably want to stretch up to the mid-spec Longitude Plus trim, for it's at this level you get the key niceties you'll probably want. Principally the upgraded Uconnect media center with its larger 8.4-inch touchscreen, navigation system, and 9-speaker sound package. Now, this also allows you to go further and specify the optional premium Alpine stereo setup with its 9 amplified speakers and subwoofer. At the top of the trim hierarchy is the limited level I'm trying here. This includes lovely 18-inch polished aluminium wheels, high-intensity discharge bi-xenon headlamps, tinted privacy glass, auto wipers, a powered tailgate, keyless entry and start, heated front seats and an 8-way adjustable driver's seat. Now there's also a 7-inch TFT colour screen in the instrument cluster and a rear reversing camera. My favourite feature, though, is the QI wireless charging pad that's provided for phones and tablets and works by using electromagnetic induction. Android smartphones like Samsung's Galaxies and tablets like the Google Nexus 7 seem to charge flawlessly. But if, like me, you have an iPhone, then you'll need to pay Jeep extra for a special inductive case. Bear in mind that you have to have this top limited trim level as part of the Pokier 2-litre diesel 170 model if you're to get this Cherokee in a more off-road oriented guise. The two standard 4x4 variants only get the brand's most basic Jeep Active Drive 1 system, allied to a select terrain traction control package that allows you to make the best use of it. Go for the top limited spec diesel automatic though, and you can also specify your car with the more sophisticated Jeep Active Drive 2 four-wheel drive setup, which includes a low-range gearbox for particularly heavy going and hill descent control to ease you down steep slopes. Now, the result of all of this still isn't enough to get you a properly rugged Cherokee. Only the top minority interest petrol Trailhawk version is what the brand calls trail-related. But if you do get the Active Drive 2 setup, you can rest assured that you'll probably be getting yourself the most capable car in its segment. On to options. That QI wireless charging pad I mentioned earlier is an option on lower Cherokee trim levels, with other popular extra cost features likely to be Napa leather hide, the full-length dual-pane command view sunroof that I have here, and on limited models, a parallel perpendicular park assist system that'll get you into the tightest of spaces. If you're reversing out of a parking bay, you'll also be glad of a rear cross-path detection system that warns you about oncoming traffic. In talking of things like that, of course, we're getting into safety issues, something Jeep is keen to get to. For the experts at Euro NCAP told them they reckon that this was one of the very safest cars in its class. It comes with 7 airbags as standard, twin front, side and curtain bags, plus a driver's knee bag. And I was pleased to find that you get Isofix child seat mounting points for all 3 rear seats rather than just the outer 2. There's a stability control system to help you recover control if the car skids, and there's a rollover mitigation system. There's also tyre pressure monitoring, hill start assist to stop you from drifting backwards on uphill junctions, and a welcome EARS, emergency accident response system. Trailer sway damping will come in useful too if you'll be fitting a tow bar and doing some towing. If you're tempted to go further, you'll find that Jeep has really gone to town with some of the high-tech safety options. These include a forward collision warning with crash mitigation system that scans the road ahead as you drive for potential accident hazards. If one is detected, you'll be warned, and if you don't respond or aren't able to, then the car will automatically brake itself, decreasing the severity of any resulting accident. At higher speeds, you'll appreciate the peace of mind of features like blind spot monitoring, which warns you if you're about to dangerously pull out to overtake another car. Then there's lane sense lane departure warning, which stops dozy drivers drifting out of their lanes on the highway, and adaptive cruise control with stop and go, which can keep you a safe distance behind the car in front on the highway, and if necessary, even slowing the car right down to a stop and starting it off again. Running costs have always been something of a thorny issue with Jeep. Traditionally, the brand builds its cars for a tough life, and that means extra weight, which in turn has usually previously meant a less than stellar showing on the balance sheet. With this 5th generation model, the brand was determined to show that off-road excellence and efficiency could be combined in one complete package. So, how have they done? Not too badly as it happens. A decade ago, who would have thought that a Jeep Cherokee would be able to duke it out in terms of fuel consumption and CO2 returns with a Volkswagen wearing a Blue Motion badge? Yet that's exactly what this model can do. So look at the stats. The entry-level front-wheel drive 2-litre diesel 140 version manages exactly the same figures as a two-wheel drive Volkswagen Tiguan 2-litre TDI 140 Blue Motion Tech model, namely 53.3 miles per gallon on the combined cycle and 139 grams per kilometre of CO2. True, that's still not quite up to the mark set by competitors like comparable versions of Toyota's RAV4, Honda's CR-V and Mazda's CX-5, all of which are around 10 to 15% cleaner and more frugal. But it's still a pretty good effort from Jeep and puts this Cherokee comfortably ahead of other direct segment contenders like comparable front-driven versions of Ford's Kuga and Vauxhall's Antara. So far, so good, but the figures I've just quoted relate to the eco-friendly front-wheel drive Cherokee derivative. To be honest, you'd expect those to be quite good. What impact does it make if you equip this car with the four-wheel drive system all Jeeps should really have? Traditionally, a heavy old set of mechanicals. Not too great a one is the surprising answer. In fact, your running costs will rise by only a few percentage points, which is one of the reasons why sales of the two-wheel drive Cherokee models will probably be pretty low. The 2-litre diesel 140 4x4 variant I'm trying here manages 50.4 miles per gallon on the combined cycle and 147 grams per kilometre of CO2. Now that again matches what you'd get from the equivalent Volkswagen Tiguan 2-litre TDI, and it also equals Honda CR-V 2.2 ID Tech and gets pretty close to a comparable all-wheel drive Toyota RAV4 or Ford Kuga. In fact, only a Mazda CX-5 is significantly better, and that car isn't really built for the rough stuff. From Jeep's point of view, the news gets even better when you're looking at the top 2-litre diesel 170 model with its included 9-speed automatic gearbox. Sticking auto transmission on, say, a Toyota RAV4 or Honda CR-V decimates your running cost returns. But that's not the case here. This pokier diesel Cherokee manages 48.7 miles per gallon on the combined cycle and 154 grams per kilometre. Well ahead, not only of those two Japanese rivals, but also of a comparable Land Rover Discovery Sport SD4 190. It's even not too far off the class leaders at this level, directly comparable versions of the Ford Kuga and the Mazda CX-5. So, you get the point. Jeep is now there or thereabouts when it comes to running cost returns. Indeed, in most cases, the only directly competitive models that can be better are significantly less capable vehicles. So, how has Jeep done it? Well, the brand points to things like optimized aerodynamics. Even the taillights are designed to improve separation from the air. Detailed touches like the lightweight aluminium wheels help as well. Plus, of course, there's the usual stop-start system, which cuts the engine when you don't need it, say stuck in traffic or waiting at the lights. Now, the 4x4 versions do so well thanks to features like the rear axle disconnect system, which seamlessly switches into two-wheel drive when 4x4 traction isn't needed. What else do you need to know? Well, there's an unremarkable 3-year, 60,000-mile warranty, though you do get 3 years of servicing and breakdown cover included in the deal. And residual values, well, inevitably, as you might expect, these won't be quite as strong as those of, say, Honda, Toyota or Volkswagen, but they should be matched for brands like Ford and also Vauxhall. Insurance groups, meanwhile, are pitched at Group 26E for the 2-litre diesel 140 variants and at Group 27E for the 2-litre diesel 170. Progress. It isn't always welcome, but sometimes it's necessary. It's what created this fifth generation Jeep Cherokee, a car that simply had to evolve under the twin pressures of very different brand ownership and market demand. Long-time Cherokee owners unfamiliar with the unusual looks will also be unfamiliar with the tarmac-oriented driving experience. Still, there aren't many people like that still about. And the new brand converts Jeep is hoping to target will find this car easier to adjust to than any model it's made to date. So this car certainly suits its RAV4 CR-V style market sector. Unfortunately for Jeep though, that's an acutely competitive segment with a number of competitors that can edge this car in terms of price and driving dynamics. None of these though can match the sophistication of this car's select terrain traction control system. This car's equipment is also class leading, justifying premium pricing you'll probably be able to get a deal on. A very different Cherokee then, a world away from the square, fairly unsophisticated thing that Jeep owners used to have to justify when friends asked them why they hadn't chosen something more sensible. Yes, older Cherokees certainly used to be big-hearted and fun, but they were also a little crude. This one isn't. Buy it and your neighbours won't start wondering if you're about to buy yourself a shotgun rack, a bowling ball and a barbecue to cook squirrels on. In fact, with this Mark V model, it's almost as if Jeep has skipped a couple of generations in development. True, the good old boys with webbed feet and banjos probably won't like it. Potential buyers accustomed to a little more sophistication, though, may want to give this some serious attention.